Bonjour and welcome, everyone. Well, thank you for joining for this session where I hope that over the next few minutes I can share with you some incredible innovations and exciting things that are happening that will really change the game for a lot of the security and IT operations leaders here in the coming months and next 2 to 3 years. My name is Vivek Bhandari. I've been in the cybersecurity space for way too long, more than 2 decades, been in many different aspects of security, whether it is network security, email security, web security, endpoint security, you name it, and I've had an opportunity to work in a broad spectrum of security technologies, really building products that help organizations defend themselves against cyber attacks. Today, we will be talking about very exciting developments on the autonomous fronts, right? How we can take a lot of those mundane routine tasks and really leverage reliable automation to change the game for the IT and security teams in terms of how we approach security and how we do our day-to-day tasks. All right, so without further ado, let's get straight in. Now, I've been here around for a long time where my very first job when I walked into the office, I was working on a machine that was plugged into the wall, that was sitting on the desk, and it was about this big. You couldn't single-handedly carry that machine, right? That was the big desktop computer back then. We've come a long way over the last 20, 25 years in terms of the digital revolution and the transformation that we have all experienced, right? Right from the internet to the cloud, right? And now more recently, AI. We're living this ongoing digital transformation. Today, every organization is a digital organization. No matter what line of work or business the organization is in, whether you're banking, finance, manufacturing, education, humanitarian services, everyone is a technology and a digital organization. And the IT environment that we know today has become significantly more complex. We have so many more devices than ever before that are plugged into the network. We have data distributed everywhere. We have applications that are monolithic and legacy apps to more modern apps that are in different clouds. And it's a very complex, dynamic environment. Now, in this environment, what has happened is, for the IT and security teams, you have to keep up with the environment in terms of all the basic updates to the environment. Then you have attackers that are looking for any opportunity to get in. And in order to get full control and visibility of this, we've got these 2 pillars, the 2 teams that are tasked with making sure that the environment is reliable, and that's primarily our IT operations teams, right? The IT operations teams really care about the reliability, making sure that the kind of disruption that happened on July 19th, as an example, should never happen because those things can really impact the business. And on the other hand, you've got your security team whose primary focus is to make sure that unwarranted actors don't get into the environment. They don't steal data, they don't inflict harm, and it's all about making sure the environment is secure. And sometimes these goals can be at a little bit of an odds to each other. Security teams want to make changes, but IT teams want to make sure that it doesn't disrupt things, right? And that's the environment we are in today. You know, I think many of you sort of feel the same sentiment that Paul here has summed it up pretty well in his quote. Trying to manage and secure the IT environment of today is trying to hit a moving target. Very hard. It's very challenging. And so, as we have been trying to do that, there's a bunch of solutions that we have assembled for the IT operations teams and the security teams to do the jobs. Right from visibility to doing the basic control to remediating when incidents happen. We've got many dozens of tools that the organizations are using today to be able to do that job, to get visibility and control. But how is that working for us? Where are we today? Well, today, which actually, when you look at it, it's become counterproductive. These different tools that we have in the environment has actually created a scenario where it's created a bigger divide between these 2 critical organizations. We've got data and visibility that's siloed out in different applications across different data sources. it's really hard to even understand a simple question in the environment when you have, how many endpoints do I have that I have a high severity vulnerability right now that could be attacked? Simple question, but really hard to tell because you have to compile, reconcile data across many different tools. And that means in order to fix things, it takes us much longer. We have to bounce many different tickets, different teams, pull data, reconcile, and then go fix things. And that means the attackers are having a field day. And that's why we have all these agents that is just increasing the cost and the complexity. And so when we look at the report card of the approach that we are using today with the environment that we have, clearly the statistics, no matter what statistics we look at, it's only getting worse. And you sometimes stop and wonder, like, why is that the case? We are spending more than we ever have for security. We have teams that have been bigger than ever before, and yet we are struggling with some basic things like can't keep up with the patching because the software updates are coming out so much more faster, right? And the attackers are leveraging those windows of opportunity. If we can't close out those vulnerabilities fast enough and patch our systems or remediate them, the attackers are getting in faster than ever before. And that's not a good spot to be in. You have to almost stop and say, you know what, at some point, the teams that are working, we are burning the midnight oil, teams are burning out. We cannot just keep throwing more money and more people at this problem. And there has to be a new approach that we have to look at. And every single time we have had some major innovations in our history as humankind, there have been these inflection points where we have really stopped back. When you think about when we went from horse carriages to automobiles, that was a big change, right? It spurred a whole different thing. When we went to flying airplanes, those were major moments. I think there is something here that we got to look at. When you step back and say, okay, if I were to design a process in terms of how I want my basic hygiene, security hygiene to be in place, it would be pretty simple. You would say, hey, I understand what my current state of the endpoints is today. I'm running through all the software updates, whether it's operating system or third-party software, as they're coming out. And then I'm running my vulnerability scans to really address those issues that need to be manually intervened. That's the right approach. And that top of that inverted pyramid that we're looking at is where we are spending 90% of the effort there. A lot of it is manual, tedious work today. And that's why we have these long cycles. And that is our opportunity of how we can leverage today's technologies around AI and automation to really address that and free up the resources to do more mission-critical work. We want our IT and security teams to be elevated to do more strategic work rather than the mundane, daily, usual stuff that we're doing. It's like, if you think about those toll roads that we have on the highways, we've gone from people manning those toll booths, giving us change every time you stop, roll down the car window, you hand a $20 bill, you get your change back. Nowadays, it's all electronically tagged, right? I mean, that's the kind of automation we need to bring in. And that's where we are in the age of autonomous. The idea is we got to make it easier and faster than ever before to really manage and secure our organizations. But how? Right? It sounds great in theory, but how do you really do that? And I love this picture because it sort of depicts that teamwork. We all know that, and I know Montreal is very famous for Formula One. When those cars pull into the pit to get the tires changed, we know the average time it takes a lot of these sort of leading teams to replace all 4 tires is less than 2.5 seconds. We have seen records under 2 seconds to change the tires and get the car going back out. And that's what is the goal of these autonomous systems in the IT and the security world, is to really allow organizations to be able to make the right changes at the right time. And while we are making these changes, making sure that the human operators are always in control, right? All these movies we hear about, AI going rogue and taking over the human race. Yeah, none of that stuff applies for our systems here. You want to make sure that the humans are always in control and always aware of what's going on. And that really is the concept of autonomous endpoint management. This is an approach that actually Gartner originally came up with about 2 years ago. And that's when they were retiring off the endpoint management, MQ, and a few other magic quadrants. They said the future really is autonomous. And autonomous endpoint management is what's going to really deliver that next level of efficiency and cyber hygiene. So what does autonomous endpoint management really do? All these solutions that we know very well of today, things like give me visibility. I want to know the active current inventory of what's in my environment, whether it's hardware or software. What's the state of these endpoints? The ability to provision and apply patches and updates, the endpoint management things, the ability to identify exposures through vulnerability management, the ability to make sure that you're measuring and preserving the reliability and the experience of your employees. These disparate solutions that exist today, it brings together in a harmony. It brings together, it unites these into an approach, which is what we call as autonomous endpoint management. It really allows our IT operations and security teams to work a lot more collaboratively in a way they can work faster, more efficiently than ever before. Well, that's great, that sounds good. So what does it mean? How does autonomous endpoint management really manifest itself? What are the key components? Let's take a look at that. So for an autonomous endpoint management system to really work, there are certain foundational capabilities that we need. Think of that automobile, the very first car that was invented. When we went from horse-driven carriages, when you came up with the car, you wanted to make sure that for the car to function, it needed to have a steering wheel, you needed to have brakes, we needed to have accelerators, like basic things for it to be able to work. Similarly, for an autonomous endpoint management system, the foundational elements are you need real-time global intelligence. Well, what does that mean? You want to know, as endpoints are being updated across the globe, what is the impact of those actions? So if some organization somewhere updated a Windows system to the latest OS version, or a software is updated to the latest version, did it go well? What was the performance impact? What was the I/O impact? That's the intelligence you want to understand, and distilled into a confidence score. Like that when somebody takes an action, we see that there's a confidence score of 90%, 85%, whatever it is, that this is going to be successful. The other thing is you need an automation engine, right? While SOAR tools exist, the challenge with decoupled source tools is that they have no idea what's happening to the actions being taken. There's just no awareness because they are not plugged into the solutions. You need native automation and orchestration built into the AEM solutions. And then finally, you need a phased approach, which is the standard deployment ring model, right? You want to be able to roll out your changes in waves. So that's your basic foundation stuff for an autonomous endpoint management system. Once you have the foundations in place, then there are just very simple 3 controls that allow you to achieve an autonomous endpoint management functionality within the environment. It starts by an autonomous endpoint management system surfacing recommendations. Instead of you having to go and find out what should I act on next, wouldn't it be great if the system surfaced and said, your fuel is running low, you need to go fill gas. Similarly, you've got X number of endpoints that have the encryption turned off, or you have configuration drift in this place. You have severe vulnerabilities on these endpoints that need to be addressed. That's the recommendations that are already bubbling up through that insights, prioritized. The next, once you have those, is the ability to automatically execute those through the ability of taking actions. That's your second pillar. And then as you're taking these actions through automated playbooks, you want to make sure that you have a full oversight, a governance hub where you can check every automated action that's happening in the platform, right? And that's how you effectively are able to get to an autonomous endpoint management system. And the benefits, really, of an autonomous endpoint management system are pretty obvious. You're able to simplify your technology stack. You're able to save money and time. You're able to elevate the human resources from mundane, boring tasks to more strategic tasks aligned to the mission of the organization. And you're able to achieve a security posture which was better than ever before. Now, as I said, Gartner originally came up with this concept. And now, in their most recent hype cycles, there are 3 separate hype cycles where Gartner actually is citing autonomous endpoint management as a key area to watch for security and IT leaders, right? You're seeing it in IT management and infrastructure and operations and automation hype cycles. And in this, as Gartner lists some of the sample vendors, Tanium has been called out as one of the sample vendors for autonomous endpoint management. So speaking of Tanium, I think many of you are already familiar, but Tanium is a platform that's been around for over 12, 15 years that delivers a lot of that foundational functionality. It starts with that visibility core, the ability to identify what's in the environment, what's on it, and what's its current state. And Tanium has this really cool patented linear client chain architecture that continues to remain a benchmark for the industry in terms of how to do things at scale in real time. So on top of that core, then you've got these distinct solutions that the platform delivers. Things like endpoint management, right, where you can patch systems and operating a third-party software. The ability to do vulnerability management by identifying risks and exposures. Digital employee experience is where you can sort of reduce the burden on the IT support teams by proactively identifying issues and leveraging self-help remediations for users to fix them on their own, monitoring performance. And then lastly, if incidents ever get into the environment, which we all know there's no silver bullet, incidents will always happen, security, you want to be ready with the best of breed incident response technology that allows you to do very rapid threat hunting and remediation of incidents at scale. And that's what really this platform has been delivering for thousands of organizations globally. These organizations have been using the Tanium platform, and you can look at it. These are some of the largest organizations with the most complex IT infrastructure, the most security-conscious organizations that have been leveraging the platform to achieve this. And there are autonomous endpoint management innovations that are available within this platform that one can start using today. Let's take a look at what those are. It starts with that orchestration and automation engine that's built in. As we saw, the Tanium platform has that visibility core and 4 distinct solutions. The ability to automate any action on the platform through a native orchestration engine that can work with your system of record, whether it is ServiceNow or whatever else you have, to be able to drive that. That's built in today with that Tanium Automate functionality. So use cases like you want to automatically update a whole bunch of servers across a load balancer without having to have manually take one down at a time, you can leverage Automate for that. You want to find unused software, which is a very fast way to get ROI on any technology, you can leverage Tanium to do that. Fix broken software. And there are literally dozens and dozens of such use cases that you can leverage Tanium Automate for. Tanium Guardian is another example of AEM available on the platform today. So many of us remember the Log4j sort of thing that happened many years ago, right? And those things will happen. There was OpenSSL, related vulnerabilities, and every few months there'll be some major vulnerability that gets announced, zero-day vulnerability. When these happen, the security teams have to drop what they're doing and immediately start understanding, is this zero-day vulnerability that just came out there in my environment? Which endpoints does it impact? What are my remediation options? It takes enormous effort, days, weeks sometimes, to figure that out. Well, Tanium Guardian delivers that instantly on the console. It tells you what is that zero-day vulnerability, which endpoints is it there in your environment right now, and what are the remediation steps you can take to mitigate that vulnerability. And so while Tanium does a lot of that stuff natively on the platform, it has built seamless solutions with 2 of the broadest platforms that are deployed globally. ServiceNow, which we all very know, is that workflow platform that drives a whole bunch of workflows and business decisions from IT workflows to security workflows, and then Microsoft with the Microsoft Security portfolio. So these 3 platforms have built seamless solutions that allow Tanium's real-time data gathering capabilities and action-taking capabilities to be leveraged through the consoles of these respective platforms. So if you're using ServiceNow, you can leverage Tanium to really pull real-time data and take actions without having to swivel chair and use the Tanium console. If you're using Microsoft Security Stack, you can leverage Tanium to make sure that Tanium with Microsoft Security Solutions are deployed on all your endpoints. Let's take a look at how. So with ServiceNow, we all know that CMDB, which is really the source of truth in terms of what's in an environment sometimes, is very hard to get right. You're pulling information from many different data sources. You have to reconcile. It is not always accurate. Well, Tanium changes that dramatically. It makes that CMDB real-time and accurate with ServiceNow. And then it helps drive a lot of those workflows for IT automation as well as for security automation. Well, Tanium is really feeding that real-time data, and as the actions are being driven through ServiceNow, Tanium is taking those actions automatically. And with Microsoft, really seamless solutions built there where Tanium ensures, for example, with MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, it is there available on every endpoint. If it's missing, Tanium will deploy it. If MDE signatures are out of date, Tanium makes sure it's up to date. With Sentinel, Tanium is pushing real-time endpoint data into that SIM, the cloud SIM, to make sure that you can have really world-class incident response capabilities through that platform. And then lastly, for which Tanium was recognized as Microsoft's Partner of the Year, Innovation Partner of the Year, is the Tanium integration into Copilot for security. That's a game changer for a lot of the security operations teams, where it really lowers the barrier for even a junior security operations operator to be able to do incident response. You can stay within the Copilot console and have it ask, hey, Tanium, tell me on how many endpoints do I have this vulnerability or this file? And it will look it up in real time and deliver those data directly within the Copilot console. And that's been a game changer because it really allows even the junior operators to very quickly investigate incidents and remediate them. So as we start sort of winding this thing down, I'm going to come back to that process thing we were talking about. While there is lots of technology out there and innovations will keep coming up, I think the two even more important aspects here of making anything successful that you as leaders can make happen for your organizations is you have to really look at the people and the process side of things. You really have to pause and think, is our process with the technology we have today working? Do you feel good about the way you're able to keep up with a lot of that cyber hygiene practices, ability to keep all your systems up to date rapidly in the time frame you want? And just start looking at ways that you can improve it by leveraging newer solutions that allow the teams to elevate themselves. Focus more on the proactive side. We have gone too much on the reactive side, like especially when we start looking at a lot of these endpoint protection platforms. We have pivoted too much on trying to react. We have to shift left, start thinking more proactive. How can we improve the basic hygiene so that we don't have to be on that reactive side? It's like, let's improve our health by more just eating better and exercising and sleeping better rather than trying to take multivitamins and sort of dealing with health issues with other medications. And then leverage newer technologies, right? A lot of these technologies have been around for a while. That's individual point solutions. These things have gotten to a point where it's counterproductive. We have to embrace a platform approach. Gartner also advises that very strongly. You have to consolidate your tech solutions, reduce the technology that you have, and start looking at modern platforms that have that built-in automation technology. And lastly, it's when we bring our IT operations and security teams, the two pillars, together more collaboratively, that's when you can really start having an outsized outcome for your businesses. So with that, I think I'll bring this up to an end, and I'd like to thank you for staying with us here today. Thank you so much for your time. And me and my colleagues will be here if anybody has any questions or want to see any of this stuff in action. I'll be hanging around. Tanium has a booth on the floor as well, so please do stop by. Well, thank you once again for your time. Merci.